Mr. Assistant Speaker, the Government supports this resolution, which has been determined by consultation between the Minister and the Honourable Member for Sydney in moving it. It's important when Australia looks back at its history that it recognises the story of Australian history.
Yes.
And if people look at the Australian Constitution, there are two sections in the Constitution which are particularly relevant and which came about because of the practice of blackbirding and because of the people who were brought in from the Pacific Islands. Section 51, subsection 26, said originally the people of any race gave the Commonwealth power over the people of any race other than the Aboriginal race in any state for whom it is deemed necessary to make special laws. And the people for whom it was deemed necessary to make special laws were the Pacific Island people, because the Constitution then went on to give the Commonwealth further power, the relationship of the Commonwealth with the islands of the Pacific. Those two sections were incorporated as part of the Constitutional Convention deliberations in the 1890s, where the trade union movement, in particular what is now the Australian Workers' Union, which was the dominant union in the rural industries of Queensland in the 1890s, where the sugar industry was, were determined to ensure that the Pacific Islanders were returned to the Pacific Islands and that they were not to be allowed to stay in Australia. So among the first legislation passed by the new Commonwealth Parliament after the inauguration in 1901 was the legislation removing the Pacific Islanders and transporting them back. And it's important to put it in its historical context. It came about at the insistence of the trade union movement in this country, determined to prevent the Pacific Islanders, whom they regarded as a source of cheap labour in alternative to European labour, that they did not wish to have on a competitive basis with them. The history of the Australian Labor Party was built upon that story. And while it's all very fine for the Australian Labor Party members to support these motions today, they tend to gloss over the history of their own political party. It's fine for the trade union movement to now endorse these principles, but once again, they gloss over their history. You see, there's a famous quotation by the philosopher Santayana that those who forget the past are condemned to relive it. And we should never forget the past. The purpose of this motion by the member for Sydney is to tell us of the past, to tell us of the true story of what happened to these people, how badly they were treated, but you need to understand the basis of that story. Glossing over the past, pretending it never existed, does these people an injustice. And it would be an injustice not to place upon record the true story of what did actually happen. And I acknowledge these people were wrongfully treated. I support this motion. The government supports this motion. The government acknowledges that in the past what was a wrong should be redressed. But we cannot redress a wrong unless we know the origins of that wrong. And the origins of that wrong stem very much to a certain section of the political community which insisted at the constitutional debates. Go to the debates which were established, the Constitutional Convention, which determined these many sections of the Constitution. Go to those debates and see where the Labor Party representatives were. Labor Party was founded in 1891 and was represented at the Constitutional Conventions. Go and see where the trade union representatives were and go and see what they had to say then about the Pacific Island community operating and working in Australia.